Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tera Vanachahari Yamuna Tera Vanachahari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradha Hari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradha Hari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tera Vanachahari Yamuna Tera Vanachahari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Shama Sundara Radha Shama Sundara Hare. Jaya Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Jaya Radhe Sham. Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Anitai Gaura Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudeva, Gurudev, Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Vishnupad, Paramahamsa Raghucaya, Sota Sota Shishamachila, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Jaya Vishnupad, Paramahamsa Raghucaya, Sota Sota Shishamachila, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada ki. Ananta Kodi Vaishnavarinda ki. Sirup Sisanatan Bhattaraganath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhattadas Saraganath Sari Goswami Prabhu ki. प्रेम से को श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवजरी गौर भक्तवृंद की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपी गोपीनाथ चाम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरी गोवर्धन की वृंदावन धाम की मथुरा धाम की मैपुर धाम की जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की तुलसी महारानी भक्ति देवी की गंगा यमुना देवी की हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की श्री श्री गौनिताय की श्री श्री कृष्ण बलराम की श्री श्री राधा श्याम सुंदर की गौर प्रेम आनंदे हरि हरि बोल सामवेद भक्त वृंद की All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Reading from the Bhagavad Gita as it is, 4th chapter, text number 29. Apāne juhvati prāṇam, prāṇe pānaṁ tathāpare, prāṇāpāna-gatī ruddhvā, prāṇayāma-parāyaṇāḥ, apare niyatāhārāḥ, prāṇaṁ prāṇeṣu juhvati, apāne juhvati prāṇam, prāṇe pānaṁ tathāpare, prāṇāpāna-gatī ruddhvā, prāṇayāma-parāyaṇāḥ, apare niyatāhārāḥ, prāṇaṁ prāṇeṣu juhvati, apāne juhvati prāṇam, prāṇe pānaṁ tathāpare, prāṇāpāna-gatī ruddhvā, prāṇāyāma-parāyaṇāḥ, apare niyatāhārāḥ, prāṇam prāṇeṣu juhvati. And apāne juhvati prāṇam, prāṇe pānaṁ tathāpare, prāṇāpāna-gatī ruddhvā, prāṇayāma-parāyaṇāḥ, apare niyatāhārāḥ, prāṇaṁ prāṇeṣu juhvati, apāne juhvati prāṇam, prāṇe apānam tathāpare, prāṇāpāna-gatī ruddhvā, prāṇayāma-parāyaṇāḥ, apare niyatāhārāḥ, prāṇaṁ prāṇeṣu juhvati. Matajis. Apāne, in the air which acts downward. Juhvati, offer. Pranam, the air which acts outward. Prāṇe, in the air going outward. Apānam, the air going downward. Tathā, as also. Apare, others. Prāṇam, of the air going outward. Apāna, and the air going downward. Gatī, the movement. Ruddhvā, checking. Pranayama, trance induced by stopping all breathing. Pranayama, so inclined. Apare, others. Niyata, having controlled. Āhārāḥ, eating. Prāṇān, the outgoing air. Prāṇeṣu, in the outgoing air. Juhvati, sacrifice. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada-ki. Still others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance, practice by offering the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming, and the incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Others, curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. Purport. The system of yoga for controlling the breathing process is called Pranayam. And in the beginning it is practiced in the Hatha Yoga system through different sitting postures. All of these processes are recommended for controlling the senses and for advancement in spiritual realization. This practice involves controlling the airs within the body so as to reverse the directions of their passage. The apāna air goes downward and the prāṇa air goes up. The Pranayam yogi practices breathing the opposite way until the currents are neutralized in puraka, equilibrium. Offering the exhaled breath into inhaled breath is called rechaka. When both air currents are completely stopped, one is said to be in kumbhaka yoga. By practice of kumbhaka yoga, one can increase the duration of life for perfection and spiritual realization. The intelligent yogi is interested in attaining perfection in one life without waiting for the next. For by practicing kumbhaka yoga, the yogis increase the duration of life by many, many years. A Krishna conscious person, however, being always situated in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, automatically becomes the controller of the senses. His senses, being always engaged in the service of Krishna, have no chance of becoming otherwise engaged. So at the end of life, he is naturally transferred to the transcendental plane of Lord Krishna. Consequently, he makes no attempt to increase his longevity. He is at once transferred to the platform of liberation as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter. Mam chayo vyabhichadena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samitityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord transcends the modes of material nature and is immediately elevated to the spiritual platform. A Krishna conscious person begins from the transcendental stage and is constantly in that consciousness. Therefore, there is no falling down, and ultimately it enters into the abode of the Lord without delay. The practice of reduced eating is automatically done when one eats only Krishna prasadam, or food which is offered first to the Lord. Reducing the eating process is very helpful in the matter of sense control. And without sense control, there is no possibility of getting out of the material entanglement. Om Jnanatimidam Tasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksoran Meritam Yanam Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sabadantikam Bandeham Sri Guru Sri Yutapadakamalan Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Vidamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpade Gopesha Govika Ganta Radha Kanta Namastade Tapta Ganjana Gaudangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Brijabano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priyam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivajadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna is giving transcendental knowledge to Arjuna, and he's explaining in this chapter, of course in the beginning, that we have to try to get this transcendental knowledge in the disciplic succession, parampara. Then he's also explaining that as one is surrendering to him, so he will reciprocate similarly also. And now here in the last verses, he's explaining about the Transcendentalists, the persons who are trying to elevate themselves by adopting spiritual life, by engaging in spiritual activities. First of all, is also explaining that one has to acquire knowledge. And as explained in this chapter, he will tell also Arjuna that one has to approach a spiritual master who is in the Guru Parampara, in the disciplic succession, who has seen the absolute truth. By approaching him very humbly, in an attitude to serve the spiritual master, to serve Krishna, and then also asking questions and then hearing, then one may understand, one may come to realize the absolute truth. So that is actually very important to receive transcendental knowledge, as Krishna here is explaining, and as the spiritual masters in disciplic succession are giving this knowledge. And having received knowledge, then one can engage properly in devotional service. And then one can advance in one's spiritual life. Also, Krishna is explaining that every endeavor should be there without the desire of sense gratification. So that he has explained, kama sankalpa varjitaha. So one has to have the strong determination, take a vow that I have to give up sense gratification. And therefore we have Chaturmasas, observance of Chaturmas, where one will take a vow that I will increase my spiritual activities and I will refrain from unnecessary activity, unnecessary talk, detrimental thoughts should be given up. And then of course, in a simple way, at least one has to give up spinach in the first month, yogurt in the second, and so on. But that is just the absolute minimum. But basically, the idea is that one has to give up sense gratification and try to be engaged in spiritual activities, in perfect knowledge. And the knowledge which is required preliminary is to understand I'm not this body, I'm spirit soul. I'm the eternal servant of Krishna. Sambandha Gyan. With that knowledge, one should serve Krishna. With Sambandha Gyan, one should chant holy names. And then one can progress in spiritual life. In a few verses, Krishna has explained that so one has to be engaged in spiritual activities, one has to control the mind and the senses, and one should also be transcendentally situated and free from duality, dvanda atita. So there is happiness and distress, and then there is, of course, so many emotions may be there, but one has to try to be situated on the transcendental platform, free from the duality of this material world, like heat and cold, day and night, and being properly situated, and one should be steady. Krishna is explaining, siddha va siddhau, in success or failure. If one is successful, then one will think, oh, this is Krishna's mercy. And one will be then, of course, one is more happy if one is successful. And, but one should not be too much elated. But one should be equiposed. And if there is some failure, then one will, of course, not blame Krishna, but blame oneself. Due to my incompetency, due to my maybe not being surrendered, due to my being covered by the modes of material nature, so that things are not working out. But still, let me continue. By Krishna's mercy, then in the future I may be doing better. And then he's further explaining also that different persons are there, some some different transcendentalists are there, some may be also worshipping the demigods, and some may try to become absorbed in the absolute truth, the Brahma Jyoti. So there are different transcendentalists. But the greatest of all that Krishna has explained further on also in the 6th chapter, Yoginam api sarvesham madganter antaratmana sarvam bhajatamam sami yukta tamo mataha. And of all yogis, of all transcendentalists, he who is always thinking of me and who is engaged in devotional service, he is the best of all yogis. And now here specifically, in these verses, the last few verses, and this verse is explaining about Ashtanga Yoga, which is Ashta Anga divided the process of Ashtanga Yoga, as the name says, Ashtanga, 8 limbs are there of this yoga practice. So, first of all, yam and niyam is there. One has to follow some rules and regulations. For example, one has to take bath early in the morning, put on fresh clothes, and that is required. Purity has to be there. For that we take a bath in the morning and we put on fresh clothes. And then we chant, of course, different mantras. And for example, also one will only take sanctified foodstuffs offered to Krishna. So these are rules which we have to follow. One should be truthful, one should, and then prohibitions are there. One should not engage in illicit activities, one should not drink and smoke and so on, one should not lie. So some prohibitions are there, yam and niyam, vidhi and nishedh. So that has to be followed. And that actually anyone has to do who is practicing spiritual life. So the Ashtanga yogis are doing, and we as devotees practicing bhakti yoga, we also have to follow rules and regulations. Vidhi and nishedh. And the jnani yogis also, those who are trying to merge in the impersonal Brahman, they are also engaged in following these rules and regulations properly. And even those who are still engaged in material world, who are performing karma yoga, who are still working but giving the result of their activities to the Lord or some percentage, they also required to follow some rules and regulations. That is required for the human being, for the jiva, for the living entity in the human form of life. That means regulated life. And the regulations, of course, should be according to the scriptures and explained by the spiritual master. Because so many rules and regulations may be there, and sometimes it is bewildering what to follow and what not to follow. But then the spiritual master is there and he will help, he will guide the disciple. After that, so in Ashtanga Yoga, asana, yam, niyam, asana. So performing some yoga practice means some different postures are there, yoga posture, which are helpful to keep good health, to make the body healthy and strong, and which is required for devotional service. One has to be healthy. And to live peacefully in this world, one should be healthy. Prabhupada used to say, first of all, we have to make sure that our health is good. And then after that, we can chant the holy names. And then we can engage in spiritual activities in devotional service. And then we can also study properly. If the health is not good, it is difficult to chant, it is difficult to do one service. One cannot focus while studying. So therefore it is important to be healthy. Therefore, all those who are practicing yoga, so they are following the rules and regulations, and they are very conscious of what to eat and how much to eat, and also to live in a sattvic place, in a place in the mode of goodness. So that is required in order to be able to engage in spiritual activities, in order to be able to think of the Lord, to be properly situated. And then yam, niyam, asana, and pranayam. So here pranayam is explained in the last verses, and specifically in this verse here. So that one has to try to control the breathing, pranayam. And it is mentioned there are 5 kinds of air. Apāna vayu, the air which is going downward. Vyana vayu, that is that acts to shrink and expand. Samana Vayu, adjust equilibrium. Udana Vayu goes upward. So these are the 5 main life phase which are there. Even according to some, there are some secondary life phase also. And so by doing pranayam, and actually the spirit soul, we ourselves, we are situated, although we say the jivatma is within the heart. But actually the jiva, because the heart is a gross, of course, the heart in the body, so that is made as we know it with the flesh, and blood is there, the different veins are there by which the blood is coming in and out, but beyond that, more subtle life phase are there. And it is in the heart region, the super soul or the soul are in the heart region, but not in the heart, which is more gross. But the soul and the super soul are situated within the life airs. Of course, the super soul is completely transcendental, whereas the soul ultimately is also transcendental, but it is in the material body, and due to also the false ego, it is identifying with this body. But we have to understand our constitutional position and try to be properly situated in the consciousness that I am the eternal servant of Krishna. I am beyond the gross and subtle material body. So by performing pranayam, so first of all controlling the senses, and then by doing pranayam, then the mind can be controlled, and then we can be properly situated, and then it is easier to meditate. So that has to be done. And after that, pratyahara, again it is stressed, and one has to try to withdraw the senses from the sense objects. Of course, the hatha yogis, Ashtanga yogis, they are sitting in one place when they are doing their meditation, the breathing, or controlling the breathing, pranayama, and doing asanas. And so at that point, automatically the senses are more or less controlled. But as soon as we step out of the house, then we see so many objects, and then especially the eyes are going to the sense objects, but also the sound is there, and the ear, so the hearing is there, going to the sound. So in this way, so the senses, they want to go here and there, and usually to get some satisfaction, some enjoyment. But one has to withdraw the senses from the sense objects and concentrate on Krishna, Krishna's lotus feet ultimately, Krishna's beauty, and try to hear the holy names or the sound of Krishna's flute. And all the senses have to be ultimately engaged in Krishna's service. And that is ultimately the only way how we can properly control the senses. Otherwise, like those who are doing Ashtanga Yoga, or those who want to merge in impersonal Brahman, so they may be able to achieve that, but it is very, very difficult. And there's every chance that one can be diverted, one can fall from this spiritual path. But if one is properly engaged in devotional activities, even there one has to be careful. And one has to pray to the Lord to be protected. But it is easier if one is engaged in devotional activities, because that is actually the natural inclination of the soul. Jivera supoi Krishnera nitadas. We are servants of Krishna. That is natural. After that, in Ashtanga Yoga, dharana is there. Dharana, that means to hold. If one is following the process, as explained, yam, niyam, and so on, then the consciousness is fixed. And then one can remember, as those who are doing Ashtanga Yoga, the super soul, or for us, for the devotees, we can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in the beginning, it is not possible to always remember. Only sometimes one can hold the form of the Lord. In this world, the modes of nature are there, impurities are there, therefore it is not possible to constantly remember the Lord. But as one goes on, the consciousness is more and more purified, and then it will be easier to remember Krishna, or for the yogis, the super soul. And then, so after dharana comes dhyan, then, so it is almost uninterrupted, the remembrance of the Lord. And then the highest stage, that is known samadhi, both for those who are doing Ashtanga Yoga and even for the devotees. The highest stage is samadhi, popped internally in Krishna or in the Paramatma. Samadhi, even there, so sama means equiposed, the intelligence is fixed, completely fixed. There is no deviation. And one is internally absorbed, so much so that one is not aware of what is happening outside in this material world. So the breathing is important for those who are doing Ashtanga Yoga. That is very much required and then helpful. And even for the devotees, so we have to be controlled in life. For example, Sanatana Goswami has explained in Hari Bhakti Vilas, even before chanting the Gayatri mantras for those who have second initiation, so he's recommended that one may do Pranayam before chanting the Gayatri. That it will help one in being the name mantras to remember the Gayatri mantras. Because the mind is very, very unsteady and flickering, going here and there. Therefore, if you do Pranayam, even if it is just 1 minute or so, and then it will be easier to concentrate on the mantra, to remember the Ishtadev. So because Gayatri ultimately is no different from the Lord. Different Gayatris are there. Gayatri for Mahaprabhu, Gayatri for Krishna, for Radharani, for Nrsingadev, for Ramchandra Bhagavan, for Vishnu, Narayan, and even for the spiritual master. Done properly, then one can remember the personality, or one should endeavor to remember the personality, and then we will be purified. So and then that is actually help, so that we can then also chant better the holy names, the Maha Mantra. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Especially in the age of Kali, so the Ashtanga Yoga process, that is not recommended. But still some yogis are there, and they may be successful for the ordinary people, ordinary men or women. Because it is very difficult to be in a peaceful place, and also in the age of Kali, one is not living a long time. So therefore, one should engage directly in devotional service. And then one can easily advance. Also here in this verse, so it is mentioned that some personalities, they are curtailing the eating process. So the eating actually has to be controlled. That even Rupa Goswami has explained in Nectar of Instruction, that one has to control the mind and the senses, and so also the eating. Atyahara prayajascha pajalpaniyamagraha. Atyahara. So we should not try to collect more or eat more, but one has to actually reduce, and Prabhupada is explaining also that reducing the eating process is very helpful in the matter of sense control. So there's a line also Rupa Goswami has explained, the tongue, the belly and the genitals. So if the tongue is controlled, then automatically the belly is also controlled. And then one will be able to properly engage in devotional service. But if one is eating too much, then the mode of passion will be there. And then it will be difficult to remember Krishna and to be properly engaged in spiritual activities. Therefore, in the regards to eating, one has to be controlled. And therefore, Mass is there that we try to control also the eating. And even Ekadashi Tithi is there. On Ekadashi, the 11th day, according to the moon of the bright or the dark fortnight. So we try to reduce our eating. First of all, by not eating grains, and then also usually the devotees, they will try to fast half a day, many. Some will only eat once a day, or some only noontime and evening. And some they will not eat anything. Some even they will do nirjal, not even drinking any water. And that is actually helpful by reducing the eating. So it is for those practicing spiritual life, it is actually required to have some restraint. And that is starting also with the eating. But even for the health, it is helpful to have good health. And one should try to reduce and fast on certain days. Some even recommend to fast once in a week. But as Vaishnavas, usually we fast on Ekadashi, or we eat less on Ekadashi. And then also on the appearance day of the Lord, the different appearance days, so we have the upavas, we fast for many foodstuffs. So that is very helpful. And those who are more advanced, or those who have good health, who are young still, so they will do nirjal if possible. And that is helpful. But we have to see time, place and circumstances. For example, for the men it is easier. Women, they have to take care of the family and children. So for them it is more difficult. Women, so they also have to try to control, and maybe they take some light prasadam on Ekadashi. So whatever, but some control has to be there, and everyone has to follow. According to Vana Ashram, every embodied being in a human form of life has to be situated in one Varna, social order, and then one ashram, spiritual order. And but always with Krishna in the center and doing everything for Krishna's pleasure. And ultimately based on the main limbs of devotional service, especially chanting the holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And then one should engage in some practical devotional service, worship the deities, and one has to be absorbed as much as possible in hearing or reading the transcendental literature, so one can be absorbed and properly chant the holy names and properly worship the Lord. So that is required. But so sense control has to be there, and especially in regards to eating, and especially during Chaturmas, Mass or Purushottam Mass, one should perform some austerity during that time. But it is even more important to be engaged in spiritual activities. Not that one thinks one will do some austerity, but then one is not able to be fully engaged in devotional activities because of weakness, or one is not able to serve. So one has to understand what is most important, but then also it is helpful if one is able to also follow the other injunctions which are there. So this is Mukhya Anga Bhakti, Mukhya Anga, the main limbs of devotional service, and then some activities are there which are known as Gona Anga, secondary limbs of devotional service, but they should also be followed so that one can be properly and fully be absorbed in the primary limbs of devotional service. Hare Krishna. Any question? Yes.
Any practical tip how to engage the senses, especially because it drives their here and there.
Yes.
Practical tip from this, like we can engage all senses in Krishna.
How to engage all the senses in Krishna only. Yes. Yeah, practically, for example, we go to the temple or even at home. So the deities are there, and therefore every day we have to take darshan of the deities. And so in this way the eyes are engaged in seeing the Lord, Krishna. And therefore you can see even in Vrindavan, even those who are working in the shops, the shopkeeper, going to the office, whatever. But every morning and evening they will go to the different temples and take darshan of the Lord. So they can see the deities. And then the hearing is there, so we hear Krishna Katha, we hear the holy names, we hear some bhajans. The sense of hearing is engaged in Krishna Seva. And then the tongue, which is most important, we chant the holy names, we read or recite the different mantras. And then also we take Krishna Prasadam. In this way, the tongue is engaged. And atasi Krishna namadi na bhavet griyam indriya sevamukhe jivado swayam evas purati ataha. With material senses we cannot see Krishna. But when the senses are engaged in Krishna Seva, then slowly but surely Krishna will manifest. And that starts that we chant the holy names and we take Krishna Prasadam. And that will help us then to advance very rapidly. But then especially serving the deities, then we see the form of the Lord, and then we hear about Krishna's wonderful form and his wonderful pastimes and his qualities. And by hearing, then the hearing and seeing the deity and then the chanting holy names, then he becomes one. So we chant holy names, first Nam, then we can see the form, we can see the qualities, and then we can see the pastimes of the Lord, slowly but surely. So we just have to try to engage all the senses as much as possible in the service of the Lord. So there are 5 knowledge-inquiring senses and 5 working senses. The knowledge-inquiring senses are the eyes, then the ears, the tongue, and then also the nostrils. So that is that we engage by smelling the incense offered to the Lord, and then also the sense of touch. And so we're touching the deities when we are pujari, or we can touch the lotus feet of the spiritual master, and in the sense of touch is engaged in Krishna Seva, and then Krishna is satisfied, and then we'll be satisfied. So we have to try as much as possible to engage the senses, and the working senses are there, the hands, the legs. So we use the hands to serve the deities or cook for the Lord. We walk to the temple. So at least, so we should try to engage all the senses in Krishna Seva as much as possible. And then when the senses are engaged, then the mind will also be actually satisfied and will follow. But at the same time we have to make also an endeavor and try to see that the mind is following also. Because sometimes we see the deities or we chant the holy names, but still the mind is going here and there. So we have to try to control the mind also, some endeavor. But usually when you're fully engaged with your senses, then the mind will follow. But then specifically, Savai Mana Krishna Padada Vindayor. The mind should be fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna. So we should try to do that and then engage the senses. And then we are properly situated, and then we'll also be actually held by Krishna. But being in conditioned state, because the material energy is there, and because the senses and the mind are very strong, that many times, and because we are not able to fully surrender, because the consciousness is not pure, And the senses are going to material objects. And we forget Krishna. But that is almost unavoidable in this world, in the conditioned state. Like now we're hearing about Krishna, and then in this way we can be absorbed, because when we hear about Krishna, then about Krishna's beautiful form, Tribang Lalit Shama Sundar, wearing a peacock feather, holding the flute, then we can be absorbed in that. And then we can be satisfied and peaceful. And the senses will not go here and there. But as soon as the pravachan is over, worship the deities, as soon as we finish worshipping the deities, or we do japa with the other devotees in temple or in Prabhupada's house, or here, wherever, but then as soon as we get up and we go out, then the sense objects are there. And if you are not pure yet, if you are not fully transcendently situated, then immediately the different senses will go to the objects. And then one will forget Krishna. But we have to try to remain absorbed as much as possible. And then we have to pray also to Krishna. And then ultimately, as we continue, then the consciousness is more and more purified, and then we can, as the process of Ashtanga Yoga is there, then it will be easier to be more absorbed. So it will take some time to be more and more absorbed. And so we have to tolerate our condition, our being still under modes of material nature. But we try our best. And then the more we continue, the more it will be easier. Yes.
Prabhu, you, in the lecture you mentioned about various levels of function.
Yes.
So I have one clarification. Now, often we see sometimes when devotees do nirjal, Ekadashi, they even accept some pranam.
Yes.
Break the vow of nirjal Ekadashi.
No. When you do Nirjala Ekadashi, you can accept a little chanamrit. That is not breaking the vow of Nirjal. Even when you're going to worship the Lord, you can do Achman for purification. But not that you take, so that you can do, and it's not breaking the vow of Nirjal. At the same time, so if one is taking, okay, I can take Chanamrita, he's taking a big cup and filling up the cup and drinking, then you're breaking your Nirjal. But if you're simply taking three drops of Chanamrita, that is not breaking. And also if one is doing Achman, sometimes small spoons are there, sometimes big spoon. If one is getting a big spoon and then taking 1, 2, 3, then that is also actually not following properly. So we have to understand the principle that we do Nirjal, means we don't take anything, but you can accept, you're honoring a little Chanamrit, and you're sipping a little water for purification, so that you can worship the Lord. That you can do, no harm. Okay? Yeah. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. In this purport, last paragraph, a Krishna conscious person begins from the transcendental stage and he is constantly in that consciousness.
Yes.
Krishna conscious person means there are different levels. Somebody
Different level of Krishna consciousness, yes.
first taking initiation,
Yes.
second, then different levels is there.
Yes.
How to define that Krishna conscious person means? Because immediately this word said begins from the transcendental stage. So how to define Krishna conscious person?
So, yes, so different levels of Krishna consciousness. So where did you read it? Anyhow, but basically, so, yes, a Krishna conscious person begins from the transcendental stage, and he is constantly, therefore there's no falling down. And ultimately he enters into the abode of the Lord without delay. So that refers to the devotee on the highest stage. A Krishna conscious person begins from the transcendental stage. So that is referring to those who are highly advanced, who are conscious of Krishna constantly. Now we are speaking about Krishna consciousness, and then we are asking Prabhu, you are Krishna conscious? You are Krishna conscious? Not fully, a little bit. See, he's realizing I'm not fully Krishna conscious, a little bit, sometimes remembering. But is Krishna conscious? He's going to the temple, seeing the deity, hearing about Krishna. So some Krishna consciousness is there, but not fully. But a Krishna conscious person, as Prabhupada is explaining here, that means those who are fully conscious of Krishna, the pure devotee. Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena santa sadeva hirayeshu vilokayanti yam shama sundaram achinte gunasarupam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. That is a pure devotee. His eyes are anointed with the salve of love. They have love for Krishna. And because of that, they can always see Krishna within the heart, inside and outside. They see Krishna everywhere, always. So that is a pure devotee, and they are on the transcendental stage. And they're always conscious of Krishna. So that is the perfect stage. But that is not so easily attained, that you always see Krishna all the time, without any break. That is only possible for the pure devotee. That is the highest stage, and Prabhupada is indicating that. He is always in that stage, he is transcendental, and then he will attain, he will enter the abode of the Lord. He will join Krishna's pastimes. So that is the goal. But it will take some time to come to the highest stage. And as explained before in Ashtanga Yoga, and even in Bhakti Yoga, different stages are there. Now we are a little bit Krishna conscious. Now if we analyze our day and night, usually night time, anyone dreaming about Krishna every day? Every day dreaming about Krishna here? Sometimes. Every day? I'm asking every day. But sometimes only. How much? 1 minute or 5 hours while you're sleeping? No, just a few seconds. And then during the day, so let's say 6 hours sleeping, then 18 hours are there. So we try to think now in 18 hours, how many hours can I remember Krishna? Okay, forget about the hours. How many minutes can I remember Krishna? Krishna's beautiful form, holding the flute, surrounded by the gopis or the gopas, Maria Yashoda, Nanda Baba. How often we can, how many minutes we can remember Krishna? So you should try to think. So the pure devotee is practically always remembering. But so, to the degree to how much we can remember, to that degree we are Krishna conscious. So if you always remember, you are fully Krishna conscious. Half of the time you have half Krishna conscious. If you're remembering just 1 hour a day, that is also good. You are something Krishna conscious. So if you analyze ourselves truly in the beginning stage, we are not remembering much Krishna. So we are not so much Krishna conscious, but we are trying. And so we have to try to remember. Prabhupada is explaining active devotion also. Krishna consciousness, it is a cultivation. You have to endeavor to practically remember Krishna, the person Krishna, as described here in the scriptures, or as we see Krishna in the temple, Shyama Sundar. So therefore we see the deities, Mangalatik, then Darshan, evening time, then you can see the deity. So that is helpful, so at least. But even many times you may be there, but you're not seeing the deity. You're in front of the deities, but the mind is somewhere else. But therefore we have to try to see that the mind is there with the seeing. That the mind is not somewhere else. While we are seeing Krishna, we should be seeing Krishna. And the mind should be there. So we have to practice to properly see Krishna, to hear Krishna, about Krishna. We can remember Krishna and then we can serve Krishna. And then we should try to see that we can increase our remembrance of Krishna. So it is a constant endeavor. Constant endeavor must be there. Constant practice, constant endeavor, increase. But it takes long time to become completely perfect and completely absorbed. But we try our best to make as much advancement as possible this lifetime. Okay? Hare Krishna.